Hope TV is where you look and live, with an excellent selection of the best Christian programming consisting of local and international content of inspirational stories, talk shows, Bible commentary, youth, health shows, children entertainment, contemporary gospel music, extended times of worship, live broadcast, news, movies, drama, Christian ministry programs, and so much more. Hope TV is another quality service from Christ is the Answer Ministries with over 45% of authentic and credible local content every week. Hope TV is a sister station to Hope FM, Kenya's leading Christian radio station with footprints across the country. Tune in to Hope TV, where you look and live.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuned in to Hope TV across the world. This is The Leader that comes to you every Thursday from 7:30 to 8:30. And in it we discuss pertinent issues concerning leadership and speak truth to power, truth to ourselves. And today, our key discussant is Dr. Tim Kirui, who is the Vice Chancellor of the International Leadership University. 3 key words: crisis, valueless, leadership. Do we have a crisis in Kenya? Do we have valueless leadership in Kenya? Well, to unpack this, over to Dr. Kirui. Karibuni sana. And get interactive. Remember, you can share comments, post your comments on our Facebook page, on our Twitter handle, on the YouTube channel, as well as the Facebook page of Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. Karibuni sana. Over to you, Dr. Kirui.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mudibo, and good morning, good day, viewers, wherever you are. Very interesting topic, valueless leadership. And do we have a crisis of valueless leadership? Well, first, allow me to define the terms. I come from an educational institution, the International Leadership University, so you always define the terms first. So what are values? Let me just restate them. You know, it's a commonly used word. Values are like boundaries. They define who we are, but also what we do with what we have. For example, 2 employees who have the same salary at the end of the month. How we spend it determines on our values and how our values developed. Of course, there is the nurture part, how we grew up, our families of origin. There is the nature part, the nurture part, which is how we are developed, our teaching in school, our teaching in the church, discipleship, all these areas, role models, influential figures around us. All of these go to helping build our values. Values, however, are deeper than what most of us tend to think about. They are not just convenience factors. I know many times in an office we put these are our values. Values are things you are willing to pay the price for, and ultimately to pay the ultimate price, which is death, to die for. And when you think about that in many of our offices, when we say whether it's integrity or other values, many times at the slightest of inconveniences, we tend to give that away. Well, why did I say that the topic is interesting? Because it communicates and connects with us, here in Kenya, in Africa, around the world, wherever you are. Because we see bad examples all over. Currently, in the United Kingdom, there is a crisis, so to speak, about the Prime Minister's behavior, which has to do with the fact that he didn't quite abide by the values he was asking his citizens to live by. We've had crises in other parts of the world, in our own country, and so on. But allow me to deconstruct the topic a little bit and then reconstruct it again. By first of all arguing, actually, there is no valueless leadership. A lot of what we define as valueless leadership is actually leadership defined by bad values, because there's no vacuum. As they say, nature abhors a vacuum. And when we think about valueless leadership, it's really because it's leadership that is propagated or propagates bad values. In many parts of the world, what is a new understanding of what leadership is about? It's about self rather than others. It's about what would fulfill you rather than serve other people. Things like possessions. Getting to a place of leadership is an opportunity to acquire, amass. Sometimes, of course, in a ways that are really complete and ethical. What else? It is also about power. It's about being in a place of where you can get things to happen and get things done for you that you'd otherwise not get done. It's a place of prestige. We all know that. We see it on social media and other places as people come into places of leadership. It's a place, of course, of unbridled passion, another P. Whereby these people are, the rules don't apply to them. They are, in a sense, so to speak, above the rules, and therefore passions are unbridled. And lastly, I can talk about a place of privilege where you can get things done, where we talk about whether it's a queue and you cut the queue and so on. So these are the things we talk about. When you think about valueless leadership, it is often these bad values that we are seeing in leadership. However, to understand this a bit more deeply, I thought about a construct that helps us to think about the head, the heart, and the hands of both leaders and followers. Because as we talk about valueless leadership, the brunt of it is not just on the leaders, actually it is more the followers, and they have a responsibility on what they can do. The head, because the head or the mind has to do with the beliefs that we have. Why do we allow people who don't have the values we think should go with good leadership to get into places of power, so to speak? It's because of our own beliefs. And what we believe, then we think about why people get into power, how they get into power. All these are areas of belief. Many of us think, sometimes it's because it's inherited, and of course, there are, even in the scientific study of leadership, there are things like traits, traits of leaders. But especially, maybe there are also things about maybe opportunity and chance and things like that. All these beliefs go towards sometimes allowing us to allow people who should not be in office, who should not be in power or in leadership to occupy those positions. And that's why it's important then to think about what we think about the values. I talked about those 5 Ps. If we think that it's okay for leaders to have privilege, possessions, power, unbridled passions and privilege, then we'll not ask. We'll not even question when the wrong candidates present themselves. So the first thing we must think about, and this is important for the electorate, it's important for educational institutions, for families, for the church, is to think about what kind of beliefs do people have about leadership? What kind of beliefs do people have about values? Because unless we construct the right values, then we'll not be able to change the scenario. So that's important. The head in terms of the belief system that we have. And this is the area of philosophy, but also more importantly, the area of our theology. And I think this is where we have gone wrong. Even, I dare say, unfortunately, in the Church of Christ, whereby we've allowed negative values and so on to infiltrate. And so we don't see anything wrong. We don't question, and we are not able to speak to truth through power because we ourselves are not practicing the kind of values we should have. So it's important then, what do you believe? How have you come to that place? How did you come to those convictions that you have? Right now, in the country of Kenya, we are preparing for the next general election. What are your parameters for choosing a good leader? How did those come about? What informed those values? Being able to reflect on that, my dear viewer, is an important place to begin to think about, clarifying and changing what we commonly call valueless leadership. The second area is the heart. In a sense, yes, the mind is important, but it is what we passionately think about, what we hold on passionately to, that's, even more important. Around the time of elections, people, you may ask them, why did you choose a certain candidate? And sometimes they'll not even be able to tell you why, but they are emotionally connected to that candidate. So the emotions are part of us, they're important, and so on. And they are often hidden, maybe even sometimes, subliminal. But you will know when somebody crosses your values. I talked about values being boundaries. You may not even be able to articulate maybe what your values are, but when somebody does something that crosses those values, you'll know it, and you'll be able to basically react in an emotional manner, whether with disgust or whether with joy and so on, because there's an emotional part, the heart, around values and leadership. So these values then affect how we take the crisis, or even whether we believe there's a crisis at all. It's both in the mind, but also in the heart, in terms of how we respond to it. And we have different responses to crisis. Sometimes individuals, whether leaders or followers, sometimes they avoid the crisis They'll assume it is not there. They'll deny there's a crisis. And you pretty much will find many people, even like in our country like ours, who say, no, I don't think we really have a problem. Maybe the problem is just fix the economy or something like that, or the infrastructure, things like that. So avoid. Another one is to fight, the situation, the crisis, and so on. And of course, it will also affect to what extent we fight and how we fight. So what you believe is important, the mind, the heart, the head, so to speak. What you feel about the situation is equally important in terms of the values that you hold and how you respond. In a sense, is a cup full, half full, or half empty? You see, all that is a matter of perspective. And how you view things, both in your mind and your heart, will affect how you feel about the situation. Have we made progress as a country in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years of this administration? That again is a matter of both the head and also the heart. When we talk about valueless leadership, it's a matter of which that grabs us, all of us, I included. And many times, sometimes one can be drawn to a feeling of despondency, a feeling of giving up. I remember, and since this was in public media, I can quote His Excellency the President himself talking about how he was unable to rein in corruption. He talked about Kenya losing 2 billion shillings every day. But of course, being the head of state, many people are unhappy with that. There was a bit of feedback back to him to say, you are the person in charge. We put you there to take care of that. That can lead the whole country to a feeling of despondency, a feeling of hopelessness, and so on. I personally have chosen, and this is important because I know many of us are on social media, I have chosen to use social media as an example in a responsible manner to promote the things that promote my values. If I see a post, no matter how interesting or funny, if it doesn't carry the values I stand for, I will not forward it, because then I'll be passing on something that doesn't fit my first two checks. Do I agree with it in my mind? Does it pass the head test? Does it also pass the heart test? So it's important. What kind of emotions is it going to evoke? Is it going to, in a sense, is it hurtful to others? Does it maybe look down on other people who may be different from you, but nevertheless, we need to think about them. So, and on the other hand, when I'm involved in doing what is right, in promoting the right values, no matter how maybe significant it might feel, I spend that day feeling encouraged because I know I'm working with all I have, using the opportunities I have to promote the right values. So, valueless leadership, there is no vacuum. It is often a leadership of bad values. And we need to confront it at the head level, in terms of our belief systems, what we think about it, what we think about life and happiness, and what is good, what we think about God. That's why I put in our theology there. Secondly, we need to think about our emotional dispensation, how we look at things from an emotional point of view. This is where the field of counseling comes in, or mental health. Because then, in a sense, if the whole population is despondent, they feel they cannot do anything about it, then nothing can be done. But if there is a feeling of hope and optimism, usually is the beginning of change. Many of us will remember that in the year 2003, after the change from the Moi regime to the Kibaki regime, it was said that Kenyans were some of the most optimistic people on earth. And what did that mean? There was a feeling of a new era. Maybe things will be different, and so on. Unfortunately, it did not last very long. But during that time of hopefulness and so on, you would remember the citizens apprehending police who are corrupt, or other ways that because they felt an ownership, and so on. The heart is important. If we can get the right values and then allow Kenyans and other people of other nations to own those values, people in your company, people in your family, to own those values, both at the head level and the heart level, you then will begin to see change. And we will be able not to tolerate the kind of valueless or negative valued leadership that we've been experiencing. But let me go to that area. And this is where maybe we focus on the most. We often focus on the actions of the leaders. When we talk about maybe they are valueless, it's because of what they are doing. That's what I call the hands of leadership. So the head, the heart, and the hands of leadership. This is where the activity happens. But I'm trying to argue and to develop for us a framework that realizes that what we do is really ultimately affected by what we believe, our head values, and what we think, or how we feel about it, in terms of our heart. So our theology, and in a sense, our counseling posture, or our heart posture, is what defines then what we do. Let me talk a little bit about leadership, because this is a leadership forum. And I have a very simple definition about inspiring willing followers to achieve or to accomplish a cause that is beneficial or significant. To inspire willing followers. Leaders have a responsibility. And that's why inspiration has to do with exciting the heart, exciting the mind too. Inspiring willing followers to accomplish a cause. Now this is where the hands come in, to do something. Because of that inspiration, to be able to achieve something that is beneficial and significant. As a nation, part of the reason why we have not been able to achieve our fullest potential, we have made some strides, yes. We've not achieved our fullest potential. Sometimes it's because the leadership is uninspiring. We don't see the values we desire. We don't see them sacrificing for the country. We don't see them putting the country first. Maybe as individuals and their own interests are first. So that's important for inspiration, inspiring willing followers, people who also will come alongside and embrace the values, the vision, because of the values that are held by those who are leading us. That's important because people work from the heart ultimately. It's not just about the heads, the hands, and so on. It is really from the heart. And this is important then. So what do we do then in a crisis? There are various things that we can do. Once we acknowledge there is a crisis, and I would like to, of course, support the position that in this country we have a crisis of leadership, a crisis of values, a crisis of value-based leadership. So that's why the topic is fitting, and that now I'm coming back to kind of endorse that, yes, we have a crisis of valueless leadership. But having understood that really what we have is inspired by bad values. And, in my own assessment, allow me maybe to take a moment to speak truth to power, most respectfully. I think we've had some good strides. Let's talk about maybe the current administration. As citizens, we are allowed to be able to offer critique. I think we've made headway in the areas of, say, infrastructure development. You go to many parts of the country, roads and highways and all kinds of structures, spanning our country. But I think that where we've had a crisis, and maybe where we would say the administration has fared poorly, with all due respect, is in the area of values. I referred earlier to the statement by His Excellency the President, feeling helpless about corruption, yet he's a commander-in-chief. Who else would deliver this country from that corruption? And so on, whether it's to do with the three organs not working together of government or whatever else it is, he is a leader. And it behoves him to, of course, pull the others to work together. So the crisis we have, whether it's things like corruption, thinking about strife, it was an open secret that during the last 5 years, both the number one person and number two person in the country have been at loggerheads. What does this do for young children when they can see? Because even in the news, you'll be able to pick it up in the statements that they make, and so on. Could it be that the crisis we are having in our high schools right now, they've been able to see grandstanding. They've been able to see maybe sometimes reckless words. They've been able to see insubordination and other things like that. Unfortunately, even hatred and divisions. Could it be that sometimes the values, the bad values that we have seen propagated, by those in places of influence, go on to influence what happens, of course, at the family level, at the school level, and in the society and the community. What can we do then about the hands of good leadership? I have a few thoughts here. That yes, crisis is an invitation to do something. I'm thinking about leaders like Winston Churchill, who led Britain during very difficult times, at times of war. But it is during that time that his own leadership was able to be seen. He rose to prominence, so to speak, being able to lead Britain out of that situation. A lot of the study of leadership, the scientific study of leadership, actually started after the World War. It's in the context of war and military exploits that a lot of good traits of leadership, the styles of leadership, effective leadership, was even able to be studied and researched. So crisis is an invitation to do something. But we are aware we'll only do that if we have a disposition that feels we are not hopeless. We can do something. And I thank Hope FM and the EAK, Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, for this particular program that is motivating us to do something during this time, especially even as we approach these elections. What can we do? And we'll be able maybe to delve into that a bit more. But there are various things that leaders can do. One is to understand the situation. If we're in a situation of crisis, what does that mean? Then, because the way you lead during the crisis, the way you respond to the crisis should be defined by the context. The situation that you are in. One of the roles of leaders, there's a scientific study called the path goal theory, talks about that the role of the leader is first of all to clarify the goal. We talked about that inspiring vision, but also to make the path easy for the followers to tread on. So whether it is during a time like this one and maybe the economic hardships that we are seeing in the country, what can we do to alleviate that hardship? Could there be things we can do? That's to do with responding positively to the crisis, acknowledging it, and then doing something about the people who are in that situation. Another one, of course, is the question of the values of the leader. The leader to be appreciative of the fact that their values influence how leadership is understood and practiced. That they are in a place of influence, that they're a place of whereby they are role models, and so on. I think that's important. So that wherever we are, whether at the family level, at the institutional level, in the church, in the society, that leaders then take their words, their behavior, and so on seriously. Another call to leaders is to serve the people. This is what we talk about servant leadership. That during times like that, people need a hand up. They need to be lifted up. They need encouragement. So that during the crisis, then there's a sense in which we are a caring community, whether it's again at the institutional level and as well as in the society. Another approach to leadership is about transforming the context. You may not be able maybe to remove the crisis, but maybe there's something you can do both to inspire the heart and mind of the followers, but also maybe there's something you can do about the prevailing context. Yes, the threat may be external, something like terrorism. We are always under that threat. But there's something we can do about educating the citizenry, about creating safe spaces and improving security, transforming the context. Another area is the leaders to identify with the followers and work with them, to teamwork with them. When you know that the leader is facing the same situation with you, usually you'll be able to at least be at peace and know that if this is good for the leader, it's also going to be good for you. I need to applaud a friend of mine who is in the diplomatic circles and so has a right to, in a sense, to get a kind of direct attention, direct help when coming to renew his passport. But he told me the other day how he chose to follow the common path for the Mwananchi. Because he said, if I continue to use this track with privilege, I'll not be able to feel how other people feel about the situation. I'll not be able to empathize. I'll not be able to identify with other people. So the whole idea of the leader identifying with and working with the people that are with them. Another area that is important, and in the area of leadership is we are recognizing it more increasingly, is the whole area of the spirituality of the people. We know that there's something about the spirit that leads you even during times of difficulty. And we are recognizing now, there's a lot of research, even in the secular research, that shows that spiritual leaders, those who are more spiritually sensitive, are more effective leaders even during times of crisis. In 2019, I think it was the 2019 Harvard Business Review, that talked about one of the traits of the top performing CEOs around the world. Even though in the later, and into 2000, was that they were spiritual leaders, that there's something about them, their spirituality was a common thread throughout all these leaders. Because they're able to inspire the heart, they're able to feel with the people, they're able to help people seek and find meaning and purpose in life. It's more than just the things around us. It's about finding purpose in life and meaning in what we do. Another area of leadership in terms of a way a leader can confront the valueless situation is by being responsible, taking it upon himself or herself. Maybe in a later part of this show, I'll be able to share a little bit about some things that I did, to help respond to that kind of situation. Maybe in the last elections, thinking about the kind of leaders who would elect in my own environment, because I felt I cannot keep complaining every year or every 5 years. Could there be something I could do with the influence that I have, with the understanding I have, to be able to bring about good leadership? So responsibility in terms of values and taking that responsibility to influence for good. And finally, is the whole idea of recognizing, of course, the changes we are in. What the COVID-19 pandemic has done is to shake some of the things that we took for granted. And we began to realize that there are many things we can do without having physical meetings, without traveling, and so on. It calls for adaptability, agility in our thinking, and so on. A leader who wants to transform values must also look at ways that are, even in the context of change and the dynamically changing situation, how can we be able to bring about better adaptability, agility in the context of good values. So we don't neglect our values and just for the sake of expediency, we do it with a values framework. But let me speak, as I bring maybe my thoughts to as an end, about the role of followership. Because why has bad leadership persisted? Why has valueless leadership been able to gain foothold in our nation? Because the good people have not done something about it. The followers, in my opinion, have a lot more to blame in this situation. It is the words of Ed Buck that all that is needed for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. And that behoves you and I, dear viewer, to think about what would be your responsibility. In what spaces has God placed you where you can influence good values and where maybe you can speak truth to valueless or bad values leadership? Could there be things you can do? Could there be ways you can confront those situations, yes, humbly, prayerfully, and be able to bring about change? The follower has a lot to do with influencing things the right way, being able to bring about the right situation. And how followers respond during the times of crisis has a lot to do with whether the situation changes or whether we live with it. Many times, we easily adapt, and I think that's one of our challenges in Africa. We are very adaptable people. That's a strength in some ways because it allows us to fit in various situations, whether Africans go to the east or to the west, to the north or to the south, we somehow seem to be able to adapt and fit in. That's a strength in one sense, but it needs to be balanced with also being able to be critical, being able to have a voice and speak about situations that should not be tolerated. Speak truthfully, speak respectfully, but nevertheless speak truth to power. Rather than just adapt, maybe there could be a way in which we can be able to confront the situation. We can be able to speak to the situation. And to recognize, especially, this is important, to recognize that the valueless leadership, as we call it, or the leadership of bad values has a direct impact on you as a citizen. Whether there is medicine in the hospital, and even if it's, you won't go to the public hospital yourself, your relative will. Your possibly old parent or other relatives in the village are going to go to those hospitals. You could be saved from big hospital bills, of those relatives, because when they happen, we have to all respond by being available. But rather speaking about a situation that could maybe help, stop those who are diverting public funds, say from the health system or the education sector, and so on. Followers have a lot to do with helping change the situation. We don't have to feel despondent or hopeless. There is something we can do with what we have that are within our means. I also wanted to mention about both, the societal response, but also maybe institutions. Allow me to quickly use our institution, the International Leadership University, as an example. Because we are well poised, and I was grateful as I was preparing for this session to realize that we are helping people at both the head, the heart, and the hands level. At the head level, as we said, one of the areas that's important is our theology. We need to teach biblical theology that puts back values into leadership, values into our thinking and our values framework. And that's important. What convictions have you developed? Are they based on the Word of God? Are they accurate? Are they eternally minded, or they are temporal? Those are important areas of our theology. And it's important that you get good theological training, even if it doesn't mean going to a theological college, whether it is through safari groups or other ways that, through the church small group systems, where churches provide opportunity for people to do that, so that you can grow in your knowledge of Christ. It is not possible for you to live out biblical values if you're not taking time to feed yourself spiritually and to grow spiritually, because naturally the world system pushes back at us and tells us that, like the Bible says, that the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the both pride of life, those are the things that call us out. So unless we have our mind settled on the Word of God and knowing Him and growing deeper in Him, we will not be able to do that. The second area is, of course, it's important today we all recognize to grow in the space of our understanding of our heart posture to do with mental health, counseling skills, and so on. Again, that's a discipline we offer. We've been able to offer that even to some of our discipline forces, police women who are near us at the Kilimani police station. We've done that to prison officers in various prisons around the country to prepare them and help them be able to help the inmates in a way that is responsible, but to also understand when they are going through a mental health crisis, because this is an area that we possibly never previously didn't think too much about, but that is important for us to be able to understand and clarify how we are going to respond during those times. So again, get some basic counseling skills. You'll need them, whether you're a supervisor at the place of work or a manager, whether you're just a leader in the church, in the community, you'll need those, because increasingly we are seeing, of course, all kinds of tragedies at the family front because of the values crisis that we are in. And lastly, we are also in the area of leadership and governance. This is actually our flagship area at the International Leadership University. And we train young people, we train older people, working adults, we train managers, we train current leaders at all different levels to be able to take the next steps in their leadership journey. We need a balance of both leadership but also governance. The tragedy where we are in our country is partly because of weak governance systems, no checks and balances, so that have allowed people with bad values, or what we call easily the valueless leadership, to get into places of influence and then be able to assert themselves. If we have good governance systems, they'll be able to check that. We already had that in Chapter 6 of the new Constitution, which unfortunately we have not enforced well as a country, that says that people who go into leadership should have certain values that they uphold for them to be able to get into those places of leadership. We need to get that back, and all of us have a responsibility to be able to do that. So find yourself a good place where you can be able to be trained in theology, in counseling, because those are important for your heart and also for your hands, what you do. Get some leadership skills to be able to take the next steps where you are, but also maybe some governance training that will help you to be able to hold those who are in power in check, and also be able to hold to account people around you and so on. But I wanted to close this with a moment of hope. Even though we are in a bad place as a society, the country of Kenya for that matter, I see hope. Because as I've understood, the mission or the vision of the CBC curriculum, it is to raise citizens who are going to be empowered, who are going to be engaged, and who are going to be ethical. I know we have had some challenges as a nation in the implementation phase. But if indeed the curriculum lives up to that promise to raise citizens who are empowered, because then they'll be able to say something about valueless leadership or bad leadership. They'll be able to stand up to power, to speak truth through power. Empowerment is important, but also they are going to be engaged. That's a big problem in our society. Many of us, maybe the middle class, is guilty of that, not being engaged in talking about the things that are the ills in society and fighting those ills. So to be empowered, to be engaged, but lastly, and very important for me, to be ethical, because then we have to do it the right way with the right values. So if we are going to be able to raise that kind of generation, then I see hope for this country. I see opportunity that we are going to be able to make a difference wherever we go. And so I look forward to the further discussions. We look forward to interacting with you, the viewers. I hope that those thoughts have helped to clarify and broaden and deepen this topic. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Tim Kirui. Very interesting insights. Crisis of valueless leadership. He started by redefining and saying, we don't exist in a vacuum. So you really cannot have a society or leadership that is valueless. It's more of bad values. And the simple definition of values is something that we all can relate with. Boundaries of who we are, what we feel, what you do with what we have. Not just about conveniences, but we must be willing to pay the price. Do we have positive role models in this country? What's your responsibility as an individual? Or do we wait and say it's all about the leaders? Who is a leader? Every one of us is a leader in our own spaces. You do not have to be elected to be a leader. At the home, at the workplace, in the marketplace. Dr. Kirui,
Yes.
we are going to have a wonderful, wonderful discussion this morning.
Thank you.
I like how you constructed it in terms of looking at it through the perspective of the heart, the head, the heart, and the hands of leadership. And maybe we can just unpack it a little bit.
Yes.
When you said the head, in terms of the belief systems that we have, and you're bold enough to suggest that we even have things that have gone wrong in the church, because sometimes you find that, yes, we must speak truth to power, but you find in the secular space where the evil one, because he's still here with us,
Yeah.
they'll say, but you have challenges in the church. So who are you to tell us when? Sort out your own home.
It's true.
And they'll be bold enough
Yeah.
to misquote the verse of remove the log
From your own eye.
in your eye before you see
It's
the
true.
speck in your brother's.
Yeah.
Because then, of course, that is twisting it round.
It's true.
So let's discuss a little bit about the head.
Thank you. I think that's an important space. And unfortunately, I think what has happened, maybe from the 70s all the way to where we are at, is that the spiritual experience was more of a heart experience. The mind part, what you thought, what you believed, was not as important. I mean, I've been to many Christian meetings, gatherings, whereby, you'd find that maybe the preacher was actually just either repeating a very short verse or even sometimes misquoting the truth and so on, but we all feel edified at the heart level, at this emotional level, without thinking about the content of what we are teaching. I believe we are being called back so that if you're going to have a strong church that's going to really be able to engage in the public square, I believe that the content of what we teach is important. That's why I applaud efforts like the Safari groups and other efforts to try and teach and take people deeper in the Word of God, so that is beyond maybe just a spiritual experience that is warms the heart, but also that we need to have a construct that helps us to engage with issues. And I think here I talk about the fact that I think, unfortunately, even in our own church, Sunday school, if we call it that, or church school, if you ask the average child, who is a successful person? I think they'll talk about those 5 P's I talked about. People who have a lot of money, who live lavishly. It's not somebody who lives a life of purpose. It is not somebody who lives to obey God, or who, and so on. So I think we need to get back a shift, so that we realign ourselves with God's priorities. Then I believe we'll be able to carry out God's purposes in the society.
And indeed, because it then connects with the heart.
Yes.
And again, in the Bible, it's very interesting because the heart cannot lie. What is in the heart is really what is in you.
It's true.
That's where the soul
Yeah,
is actually found.
Yeah.
So bringing in the heart, what we are emotionally connected to, is often hidden because then it's not necessarily very apparent.
Yes.
And you will know, any one of us will know that your value, howsoever you define it, has been offended when someone crosses it. Whether your values are bad values
it's true.
that have been offended by someone with good values to counter it,
it's true.
you will know.
Yeah.
You will actually know. But the key thing here is that in a situation of crisis in a nation, we must not get to a level where despondency sets in, because then that sense of hopelessness then gets us to react or do nothing.
It's true.
But there's nothing of doing nothing, because doing nothing is not doing something.
It's true. It's true. It's true. Yeah, that's true. And I think that's what we have to guard against. I would hope that our political leadership is doing something about that space, but of course also the church leadership. because then we don't want to get back into the crisis like of 2007,
Yes.
whereby the populace sometimes felt that maybe we had to fight for justice, so to speak, because justice, of course, is at the heart of these things.
Yes.
So being able to organize that in such a way that we are able to respond, in a positive manner,
Right.
in a critical, yes, but positive manner, to build rather than to deconstruct. To reconstruct anything is very difficult. To build takes is a lot. Is better to build rather than to have to reconstruct what is broken down.
And
so I think it's important.
Yes,
Yeah.
like you said there, then even promoting the right values
Yes.
is therapeutic.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
You will know, you'll feel good, and
Yes.
you will get.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the referencing of when Kenya as a nation were voted,
Yeah.
adjudged as the most optimistic.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
There was positive energy.
Yeah.
across board.
It's true. And we believed we could do something about the bad situation.
Yes.
If we can get back our people to that situation, the challenges of this nation are not very big. I still have a lot of faith that this nation can be transformed into a premier country.
Yes.
God has blessed us with natural resources, with good rainfall, weather, good people,
Yes.
and many other positive attributes. So if only we could get our leadership right. And I believe that has to do with the right values in leadership.
And it gets now
Yeah.
the hands of
Yes.
leadership, where the activity happens, where
Yes.
the rubber
Yeah.
meets the road.
Yeah.
So leadership, like you say, is all about inspiring willing followers or the citizenry.
Yeah.
Because sometimes,
Yeah.
again, in this electioneering
Yeah.
phase,
Yeah.
I would use followers
Yeah.
with a caveat.
Yeah, sure.
So that then one doesn't seem,
Yeah.
since I seem to be competing with you
Yes.
for a post,
Yeah.
then my followers
Yeah.
are, should be divergent from your
It's-
followers.
it's
So
true.
if we maybe just use the citizens,
Yeah. Sure.
is effective leadership really
Yeah.
is one that would inspire the citizen to accomplish a cause.
Yeah.
And really then seek to attain that full potential.
Yeah.
Because then is leadership that we have in Kenya inspirational?
In some ways, yes. They are very charismatic. That's why they get the big crowds.
Yes.
It's not just there may be bribery and other factors.
Can I suggest sometimes some of the big crowds are there for
For what they
entertainment
can
value
get.
and what they can get?
They say standing allowance.
Standing allowance.
But at the same time, I think the political class is, unfortunately, that's only one aspect. And I think we are doing well in terms of that inspiration, not always inspiring us with things that are long-term and things that are good for the citizen. It's short-term. So it's more entertainment. Maybe it's more entertainment than inspiration. Because inspiring the heart should lead us to begin to say, then I'm going to do something differently. I'm going to live differently now that I know this is good for me. I believe that, at that point when we were, very inspired as a country or, optimistic, is because we could see that we can be a better nation.
Yes.
Maybe finally, we have freedom to be able to do that. So I think that inspiration should be more than just, entertainment or nice slogans. It needs to be, this is what the country can become. This is the potential we can attain, and so on.
And like they say, the first step to healing is acknowledging that you need
Yes.
to be healed.
It's true.
You
It's
know?
true. Yeah.
That's a first step.
Yeah.
So that we may not be ideal, we may not be there, but where we are, we know we've got some distance to go. So
Yeah, sure.
the first step is acknowledging or accepting that we do have a crisis. Truth be told.
Yes, true.
We do have a crisis.
We do.
That's a starting point.
Yeah.
And again, we cannot be remote to where we are in terms of dealing with the situation. Here, when we are speaking truth to leadership, again, truth be told, we have not fared very well in that space.
That's true. That's true.
And who's to blame? All of us.
All of us. Yeah.
All of us. We're here. We're
Yeah.
Kenyans. And they
It's
say
true.
Kenya is our business.
Yeah. It's true.
Because then you find it manifesting
Yeah.
in subordination in the
Yeah.
workplace,
Yeah.
in the academic space, impunity,
Yeah.
corruption,
Yeah.
But crisis being an invitation to do something,
It's true.
wonderful perspective.
It is, because I mean they talk about the Chinese definition.
Yes.
That the crisis, there's two characters. It's both danger and opportunity at the same time.
Right.
So yes, we have some danger, but if we don't deal with the situation and it continues this way, we could have a meltdown. I'm thinking about what we are observing in West Africa, coup after coup in every country.
Like there are about 3, 4, 5 in the last 3, 4, 5 months.
Yes. Are people getting despondent? Are people getting to the end of thinking the current democratic system does not work? Could there be there's some danger there? We have to be careful as a society. We cannot continue this path for too long. But at the same time, it's an opportunity to do something. And I think that's a hopeful part.
Yes.
And that's why we are here.
Understanding the situation. And because here we're looking at what can we do.
Yes.
So when you say understand the situation, and can I suggest to us, even as we discussed, that we can be very focused even as a nation now, because all these, the next thing that is going to come through are party manifestos.
It's true.
And you know, if we as a country have a blueprint, which I suggest to us that was worked on, that we all adopted.
Yeah, sure.
Kenya Vision 2030, for example.
Indeed, yeah.
So even you as a political party or as an individual who is seeking elective office, this is my manifesto. You do not necessarily have to reinvent the wheel.
It's true.
Plug into where we collectively are going as a people. But then give us a sense of how do you plan to get us there together with you. Then that is the means to that end, which we're agreed that now we can empathize, we can see, we can agree. And if we, you know, buy it, then we give you the vote.
It's true. That's a process we should go through. Of course, the politicians are smart. They don't want to go through that interview, so to speak, with the populace or through that assessment by the populace. So, of course, that's why they use things like mass hysteria, ethnic mobilization. So people vote now more with their heart, but without the head engaging.
Without the head engaging.
Because what you're talking about now is a head exercise.
Yes.
You know, whereby you evaluate, you look
rationalize
at rationalize. What is this person's past? What is his history? What has been the track record? All those are things that are involved, a thorough assessment that has got to do with the mind or the head. But very often then we just work at the emotional level. But I think it's important. That's why I feel that the other actors, the NGO sector, civil society, the church, educational institutions and families, you know, we need to now fill that space because then the politicians are not likely to go there because they don't want to go through that.
And are our politicians threatened with the term servant leadership? Because who's engaged them? When they are elect them, we've delegated authority, responsibility to do. We've not told them to come and lord over us. But the people themselves must recognize that they are sovereign.
That's true. That's true. In fact, I would almost dare say it's a misuse of the servant leadership concept. During this time of elections, every politician is saying, "Mimi nataka kuwahudumia. You know, I want to be your servant." So they understand the concept, but only use it when it is appropriate.
Very subjectively, so
long as it means, and at this point in time, I'm handling myself and so on. But once they're in the place of power, you know, that whole idea of switching off the phone, not accessible, and so on, that's no longer your servant. So I think that's important. But that's why the place of civic education.
Yes.
I really think, and I'm happy for this program and others that are helping to educate people so that they know how to behave responsibly, especially during this time of elections. Because I think that's the space, again, that we have not done well. And with that, we should be petitioning the government, IEBC, and other bodies that are mandated to be able to do civic education. It should be a continuous exercise, not just during elections, but all the time to help people understand and know their rights in their constitution, their responsibilities, so that we can be able to be responsible citizens.
Transforming the prevailing context. What context are we in Kenya right now?
Well, I think one of the defining issues that I remember one of the guests in your program here talked about is poverty. I know right now the harsh economic realities are a current situation that needs to be looked at. And so even as we think about the next general election, do you have credible programs that are going to lift the lowest of us from poverty? Because there's something about that situation when somebody is in dire poverty, they're not thinking about tomorrow. It's just bread for the day. And that short-term thinking is not good for planning, is not good for long-term action. And so it's important that we lift people from that degrading poverty so that every one of us, the least of us, at least is able to afford a decent meal, is able to be in a place, share those basics, food, clothing, and shelter. I think those should be, in fact, in a sense, in our constitution, those are rights. And they are crafted that way so that it is not a privilege.
No.
It is actually something that we should be asking, and that the least of these should be, the least of us should be able to access.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because it was just yesterday that I was talking with a pastor.
Yes.
And I'll really would be glad to invite her to this show. She's a grief therapist. This is Pastor Mweni.
Yeah.
She worships at NBC.
Okay.
And she actually said, Edmund, do you know that when we talk about mental wellness and start observing that the men seem to have an increasing trend of challenges in the mental welfare, don't just prescribe a pill, so to speak.
Yes.
Step back, look at the bigger picture, and then you realize men are expected to be leaders, to go work, fetch, get, bring the cheese to the home, so to speak. So if the economy
is in a bad
state, and you have to go out to seek, to, work, you get stressed out there, the economy is going south, you will see the symptom manifesting itself in mental wellness, having issues and challenges.
It's true. It's true. But very good point. And I think when you think about the context, then we need to look at it in a holistic manner. So the economic factors are one. I think the other social factors are another. In terms of we have a growing, we have to acknowledge, and we are grateful that, of course, the empowered girl child in society. The same man now is also finding himself.
The boy child is endangered.
Without space, without identity, and groping for who he is. So again, that's another context that needs to be transformed to be able to find a happy balance. Because the answer is not in the women, in a sense, overtaking the men or dethroning the men. It is in being able to exist together, because we all bring something to the family scenario, to the society. So being able to do that. So all these are issues that I think need to be looked at. And whether, again, as a church, whether it's the government, and we all have a responsibility to be able to look at these constructs and to be able to put them together in a wholesome manner.
And I'd like to also speak truth to power here. I mean, I've also, I consume and watch and observe. For example, in a security, systems, the police, challenges of mental wellness. And you notice I'm using mental wellness more and rather than mental health.
It's true.
Because wellness then speaks to wholesome. When you go to the gym, it's not because you are sick, but you want to get well. There's something that's motivating you. But a casual observation, without subtracting the efforts being done by the leadership or those in higher offices within the police, it seems to always be the topmost talking about the juniors having the junior, and yet maybe themselves they are the problems.
That's true.
They could be the ones who are causing the problem. So they too need to get involved.
It's true.
They also need to, introspect and realize, is this environment enabling? So don't just point and say,
it's true.
The juniors, if you have a problem, tell your senior. The senior could be the one who's the problem.
It's true. And they need to be more aware of the situation. Thankfully, at least I remember in the context of our military, one time I was involved in distributing Bibles to the top echelons of our military. And when I was talking to them, because one of the programs then with Bible Society of Kenya I was trying to promote has to do with actually trauma healing. And I was thinking about our soldiers on the front lines, like in Somalia and other places. And as I was explaining that we need these resources to be made available to the people on the front lines. Fortunately, then a senior military officer who now happens to be, the senior most in the military system, said, no, it's not just them. We all need it. So there was that acknowledgement. And I think that's a good place to begin when the leader acknowledges that these situations affect all of us, and how we respond to the crisis, how we manage the crisis, use it, and so on. Is dependent on that acknowledgement.
Leadership must recognize the spirituality of the people, because effective leaders are God-fearing.
It's true.
And it's not about what I say, but also what I do in terms of positive role modeling, being responsible, being accountable, and recognizing in the new normal that we're in, is that agility is called for, being able to adapt. And like somebody said, the only constant in life is change.
It's true.
But let's very quickly look at the role of the citizens here. In terms of they must get involved. And here, I know the enhanced voter registration for IBC is ending this Sunday, I think, on the 6th. So the youth out there, and this is who I'm talking to right now,
It's true.
you cannot point fingers, you cannot be absent and expect change.
Yeah, that's true.
Bad leaders are elected by good people who choose not to
vote. That's true. That's true. And I think it's important that we recognize, I think part of it is, and this is where civic education maybe would help, to make the connection between bad leadership or bad values in leadership and our own well-being, so to speak. Not many are like, I was trying to use the example of maybe drugs in the public hospital. You could talk about roads, infrastructure, the state of the economy. All those things are affected by the quality of leadership that we have. And so we need to recognize we are not removed from that situation. You'll find a lot of people, maybe especially younger people, who say, no, I'm not involved in politics. Well, you are involved inadvertently.
It affects you.
It affects you.
Yes, and of course, when you speak truth to power, it has to be respectful, granted.
Sure. Yeah.
And like we've just said, that we recognize that valueless or bad leadership has a direct bearing on us as citizens. So we must get involved.
Indeed.
And I still encourage, register to vote any which way, but register to vote. Institutions have a role to play. I know we're winding down in terms of time, but again, we must have that eternal perspective as opposed to the temporal earthly perspective. And this is spiritual.
Yes, true.
And we must reference biblical values, the Word of God.
It's true.
And of course here, again, the nexus between leadership and governance. Just very quickly, unpack that for us.
Oh, thank you. You know, good leadership thrives also where there are accountability systems. The heart of man is wicked, you know, the Bible says. So any of us, when we are in a place of influence, a place of power, a place of privilege, will tend to be, you know, kind of get off the course and begin to focus on ourselves because, you know, we are ultimately, you know, sinful. So it is important that we have good structures. That's why even, you know, a church, let me recommend Christ Answer Ministries, because I think one of the things that went right is very good structures from the onset, and other churches as well. I know I come from a church that also believes in good structures. So structures are important, and they help to manage the excesses that come with influence, with privilege, and so on. But also they empower the citizens or the members to correct the leaders.
That's right.
Because then you are not interfering. If you use the opportunity at the AGM or through whatever other structures have been made there to be able to point out and speak to truth to power, to say, I think on this side you have done well, but I think on this one you are failing us. So it's a welcome process because there are structures that enhance that and that empower you to be able to do that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. I think we certainly need at least another show.
Okay.
We certainly need in the near future to unpack as we continue with the program.
That's true.
But I think the take home here really is that whereas we have a crisis of valueless or leadership that doesn't have necessarily positive good values in Kenya, we all have a role to play.
It's true.
We cannot be absent from it. We cannot be distant. We cannot be remote from it. It's not hopeless in Kenya.
It's true.
And like you say, the CBC curriculum is an initiative in the right direction. It will have its teething problems, but we must embrace it because citizens who are empowered are getting nurtured and they'll get engaged.
And then who remain ethical, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much from wherever you tuned in this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending on where you geographically are. We thank you for the privilege of your time. Remember, let's do this next week, same time. Take care. God bless.
Thank you.
Hope TV is where you look and live, with an excellent selection of the best Christian programming consisting of local and international content of inspirational stories, talk shows, Bible commentary, youth, health shows, children entertainment, contemporary gospel music, extended times of worship, live broadcast, news, movies, drama, Christian ministry programs, and so much more. Hope TV is another quality service from Christ is the Answer Ministries with over 45% of authentic and credible local content every week. Hope TV is a sister station to Hope FM, Kenya's leading Christian radio station with footprints across the country. Tune in to Hope TV, where you look and live.